annorlunda. Så varmt välkommen, warm welcome to you, Abdul Chohan. And we hope for a few hours with a lot of inspiration.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. So there's two ways I can tell I'm in Sweden. The first one is right at the beginning of a lecture, because all the front is empty. And the second is right at the end of the lecture, when I say, are there any questions? And it's just silent. Anyway, so the first one's done. Let's see what happens at the end. I'm just going to kind of tell you a little bit about myself, and hopefully spend some time sharing some stories, some ideas, some thoughts with you guys. My name's Abdul. I'm from the UK, as you can probably guess from my accent. I am a former chemistry teacher. I was also part of a leadership team. I was also a principal of a high school in the UK. Did that for about 20 years or so. And since then, as part of Think Simple, I've been working with kind of schools, municipalities, ministries of education, many different parts of the world. Actually, most of my time is kind of spent in lots of different places. Some places it's just kind of a short visit working or doing a lecture. Other places it's kind of more detailed work with schools. Really hands-on, trying to make change, and trying to look at how technology can add value to education. Where can we use it? Where it's probably better not to use it? You know, where is the power? What should we expect as teachers for it to do in our classrooms? What should we expect as principals for it to be in our schools and organizations? So over the years, I've kind of done a lot of work around this. In my first school where I was at, we were kind of one of the first schools to go down this route. That's an interesting story which I'll tell you in a minute. But it's an interesting picture across the world. So I've kind of come to Sweden quite a lot, because in countries like in the Nordics, the idea of a student or a whole municipality having access to technology and every student having access to technology, that's quite normal. Okay? But in many parts of the world, it's not normal. It's a big deal. And there are ways in which schools, head teachers, principals are trying to make that happen. Greenland, for example, is a really interesting picture. You know, it's just gone one-to-one with technology across the country. They're now looking at, it's not just about giving the technology out, it's actually about what happens with it in the classroom. How does it add value? What can we do now that we weren't able to do in the past? And those are the kinds of things I want to kind of share with you today. Some of my projects are kind of in strange places. So when I first started doing this work, I was a principal in school, and I started to get emails from countries like Maldives and Mauritius, which you don't really want to say no to. So I kind of started to kind of do projects in smaller island communities and countries, which was really interesting. But then also in countries like India, middle-income countries, where governments don't have big technology programs, but schools are actually looking at how we can use technology to invest in something called the demographic dividend. So what do we mean by the demographic dividend? This kind of sounds like a very posh word, or posh words. It's when a country or a place invests in the younger generation so that they will have the right skill sets, attitudes, and abilities to be employed in the future. So they might be middle-income country now, but what might the country be like in 10 years' time when the students have the right skill sets and the adults have the right attitudes and they've been invested in the right way? So lots of interesting things happening there. And I think some of the things that I kind of find quite fascinating, because we quite often see information like this. This is data from the World Economic Forum, you know, of how the landscape for employment is changing We're kind of seeing some job roles declining, not disappearing, but definitely declining. We're kind of seeing other job roles kind of increase and kind of come out, employers are looking for different kinds of skill sets. And for me, what's been kind of really interesting is asking this question, that if we put technology in education, what should we expect in return? Because any organization that invests in technology, I'm not just talking education, I'm talking business and enterprise and all these kind of other organizations, whenever they invest money with technology into their organizations, we expect something in return. We should get something back. So last year, I worked for an organization and we started to look at what should we get back? What should we expect in return? And we found a whole bunch of things in education and in classrooms that could actually be different. But there are three main areas. The first one is cost efficiencies, or actually I've put time efficiencies first. We should expect a saving in time. One reason why we use technology even in our normal lives is we want to save time. I can do something faster. Another reason is cost. Actually, if I use technology to do something, it's going to be cheaper. I can order something, it will be at my front door tomorrow. Yeah, I can choose the best price. You know, it's going to save me time from going to the shopping center or wherever it is to have a look at it. I just want to get it ordered. It's kind of a little bit like, you know, when online banking first came out. Okay? Some people got their online accounts immediately and they were kind of doing things. Other people were a bit worried. What happens if my details get taken, or somebody sees my password, or somebody takes my phone and so on? But 5-6 years on today, what we find is pretty much everyone is doing online banking. And one of the reasons for that is that actually it's time efficient. Before I had to plan, park my car somewhere, pay for the parking, make sure there's not going to be a big queue in the bank, and kind of go in, fill out the paperwork and all that kind of stuff. And now you put in a code, show your face or your thumbprint or whatever, and you're in. So time efficiencies is another reason why people invest in technology. The other area is workforce, it's kind of developing people. And one of the things that I did was under each of these titles, I started to look at different areas in education where it's possible to save time and where it may be possible to save money as well. Photocopying is a big one, because teachers are brilliant at photocopying. Yeah? We can do these kind of magic tricks when you go to the photocopier and 30 sheets of paper come out and it doesn't belong to anyone. So I think that we now live in a time where we have technology that allows us to kind of surpass the photocopier, to be able to do things like just take a photo and send it, or crop it and do, because like we do in our normal lives. There's opportunities to kind of change that. It's not just the cost of photocopying, there's also time elements as well. And there are other areas, access to resources and feedback, how we mark books and so on, all that kind of stuff can be significantly changed. And I'm going to share with you some opportunities around this as we go along. But I need to kind of start off by explaining how I got into this, because I'm a chemistry teacher, principal, senior leader at the time, and you know, how did I end up in a position where we started to look at technology and education? And actually, when I look back, there was one incident that happened that really kind of made me think different. So this 2008, so you have to, in your minds, you have to go back to 2008. And 2008, for me, was an important year because it was the year we had a new principal in my high school, and the new principal came along and said to me, Abdul, we have a big problem in our school around technology and we need to solve this problem. So I asked him what the problem was, and he said, it's called the laptop trolley. You know what I mean by the laptop trolley? Yeah? It's a cart with 30 laptops in it. Okay? And we called it the laptop trolley experience because you bring it into your room, and even when you're bringing it into your room, you already know there's 3 in there that are not going to work. but you don't know which 3. Right? Then you give them out, and some are not going to connect to the internet. Then what happens is some students put their hands up because they've forgotten the password. You know the experience? So what teachers would do, we have a plan B. And plan B is, I'm going to print 30 sheets of paper just in case. Yeah? You know that experience? So I didn't know that that was a universal experience. I thought that just happened in Bolton. And as I've started to travel, it doesn't matter which country you go to, if you say the laptop trolley experience to teachers, they know what you're talking about. So it's 2008, the principal says the laptop trolleys are really old, we need a new solution, we need to look at something different. So what I ended up doing was I started to look at different tools, what's available at the time, and so on. So this is before iPads and all that kind of stuff came out. So I started to look at different things, and I came across this little object that was called the iPod Touch. Do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah? It looks like a mobile phone, it looks like an iPhone, but it's not a phone. And I looked at it and I thought, oh, I wonder what you could do with this, right? And what we discovered was you could do email with it. There was Safari, and you could browse the internet. You could do some really cool things like change the keyboard into different languages. That's like normal now. But in 2008, that was like amazing, because if you tried to change the keyboard on normal computers into different languages in 2008, that was a job you gave to someone that you didn't like. Because you had to add the stickers, you had to install the software. It was kind of a crazy process you had to go through. But this thing, you could just do it. So what we did was we kind of thought about this, and we kind of thinking, should we do something that's different? And we had computer rooms around the school, big rooms with all the computers around the edges. We still had that. So we thought, actually, if we didn't buy 5 laptop trolleys, how many iPod Touches could we buy? So it turned out we could buy around 1,000 of these little iPod Touch things. And we had about 1,000 people in school. So we did this thing whereby we didn't replace the laptop trolleys, and we started to look at this idea, every student should have their own little device. So this was really new, it was kind of a bit scary in some ways. You know, the local newspapers said that your children from your community, because the school that I was at was quite a deprived community, the newspaper said that, you know, this is like, your kids will go and sell it on eBay. Okay? And there were other people that were saying, hey, this is a new idea, and it's good to innovate and try new things and so on. We were just trying to solve the laptop trolley problem. We weren't trying to be innovative or anything, yeah? But what happened at that time was really interesting. We had a launch. We called the parents in. We gave out the devices. We explained what we were doing. Children could email now. They could browse things. They could change the keyboard. The text could be read back to them, you know. The children and some teachers were discovering new things, like if you push the bottom button and the top button, it took a picture. Now called a screenshot. 2008, that was like, wow, that's amazing. Okay? And we kind of started this thing, and you know, we started this program. So we did the launch, and then the next day I had to go to the classrooms, because one, I wanted to make sure nobody sold it on eBay. And second, I wanted to see, has it actually made a difference in the classroom? So I had 2 options. One option, I go and see those teachers that I know are good at using technology, and they will say nice things to me. Hey, this is really good, you know, I'm enjoying it, and so on. Or I could go and see those teachers who I know are really good at breaking technology. Okay? So I decided to take the second option. And I went to see this teacher, and she's retired now, a fantastic teacher. She was my mentor for many, many years, but also she was very good at breaking technology. So I walked into her room, and it was kind of a bit scary, right? Because what happened, when I walked in, she called me over, and she said, Abdul, this is brilliant. You need to come here and have a look at this, right? So this is this is not an iPod, this is an iPhone. But iPods look like this. And she called me over and she goes, Abdul, have a look at this. This is amazing. And she went like this. She goes, watch. She goes, look. This is fantastic. And I didn't understand what she meant. I goes, what do you mean? And she did it again. She goes, look, watch this. She goes, this is fantastic. What she was telling me was that when you switched it on, it actually came on. Because in 2008, when you switched computers on, the next thing you did was go and make coffee. Do you remember? You come back and maybe it's time to put a password in. So in her mind, she was thinking that these computers, when you switch them on, hey, it's going to take time to start up and put your password in. And she was thinking, hey, how is this going to work? And then when I looked around her classroom, it was really interesting because she didn't have to be the expert on this technology. The kids were. So there was a Polish girl that was sat in room, Natalia, I still know her name, and she was, Kath at the time, I think she was teaching photosynthesis and leaves and all that kind of stuff. So that student, the girl from Poland, her English was not brilliant, but she loved science. So the teacher's talking about photosynthesis and all these complicated words. She was looking up photosynthesis in Polish on her device on Wikipedia at that time and trying to make the connections between the two. There was another boy who changed his keyboard into a different language, and I was kind of trying to figure out how he'd done that. Somebody else used a calculator for something. What she said was that this thing is like a digital pencil case. Every student is using it in a different way to fulfill their needs and their learning needs. And that's really where the journey kind of began. And every time I went to her lesson, students would be using technology in different ways. But the reason why I tell you this story is because there's one big thing that I learned from this. The one thing that was different now for that teacher was this. This had changed. In her mind, she now knew that when she was teaching, even if she didn't know how to use technology so well, actually, it was a really powerful tool that added value in the classroom. That was the belief that changed in her mind. So I started to think about, how did that change? What is it that changed in terms of mindset? And for me, there are two key ingredients. Two very important ingredients. And all the schools that I've worked with and educators that I work with, I kind of talk about this quite a lot. The two key ingredients that changed for that teacher, and actually has a big impact in any school that is using technology, is that in order to change belief, you have to make sure that things are simple and they are reliable. Simplicity is really quite key. If it is complicated, people will not use it. If it is not reliable, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, people will not use it. Simplicity and reliability are the two major ingredients for change to happen, and that belief to change. And that's really quite key. And that's something that we've been kind of working with teachers, and it's kind of the foundation through which things really change. And that is not out of any kind of, it's not because it's just a thing, simple and reliable. Simplicity is something that you have to do. It's about taking something complicated and removing things and actually looking and making it simple. And testing things for simplicity. Will people understand this? Do people get this? And the reason why that is actually quite key is because the way we learn as humans, we absorb information that is simple very easily. When things are complicated, it takes time for that information to go in. And time is something that's very valuable in education. We don't always have time to sit and learn new things, especially when it's not the focus. So, one of the things that I've kind of started to look at is what does it mean to have a simple and reliable process? What's the impact of that? Why is that something that kind of adds value in terms of what we do? So we started to look at a number of different things. And around the operational efficiencies piece, we started to look at different kinds of technologies as well. And one of the things that we kind of started to look at and see was how can we use technology so that it adds value to what the teacher does. Okay? And it's really simple. I'm going to show you something, right? Some of you might already know this, but on my iPad, on the top right-hand corner, if I just swipe down now, so this I'm going to show you something that is my idea of simple and reliable. Okay, so just watch this. Top right-hand side, and when I swipe down, I've got a button on there, right at the bottom on the right-hand side, that's like a little circle. Can everybody see that? Okay. Most of you might know what that button is, but I'm just going to do something. If I could tap on that button, and it will start recording everything I'm doing on my screen. Do people know that? Yeah, a lot of people say yes, okay? But there's another way in which I can interact with that button. If I just press and hold, okay, it gives me some extra options. And one of the options is right at the bottom, and the button that's in red, that's microphone on. And sometimes it's switched off and it's grey, but I'm going to switch it back on. And if I hit start recording, it's now going to record everything that I'm doing on my screen, but at the same time, it's recording my voice as well. Now if I do something really simple, and if I go into my notes app, and go full screen, I'm going to do something that teachers do. We like to draw and explain things. Dead easy. So we're going to do something really simple, okay? I'm going to teach you how to multiply by 11 really quickly. We ready? Okay. So we're going to take the number 23 and we're going to multiply that by 11. Whenever we multiply by 11, we take the number on the top right hand side, the 3, and we put that here. Then we take the number 2 on the top left hand side and we put that here. Then you add the 2 and the 3 together. 2 add 3 is 5. You put the 5 in the middle, and that's how we multiply by 11. Hit stop. Okay. You can check it on your phones if you want to. Now what you'll notice, there's a little pop-up thing that's happened there. It's recorded all of that, and it's put it in my photos. So now, I'm going to do something quite dangerous, which is go to my photos, which you never do when your thing is plugged in, but anyway, let's go there, okay? And the last thing that pops up is that video there, so I'm just going to play that, watch what happens. At the same time, it's recording my voice as well. Now if I do something really simple, and if I go into my notes app, and go full screen, I'm going to do something that teachers do. We like to draw and explain things. Dead easy. So we're going to do something really simple, okay? I'm going to teach you how to multiply by 11 really quickly. So I've just hit the edit button, and at the bottom I can just slide that because I'm waffling right at the beginning. And I'm going to cut it right down to here. And if I hit done, and I just save it as a new clip, and then I can just play that. Okay, what I end up with is I've kind of cut off all the stuff at the front, and you get the idea, right? It's played that video for me. I want you to just think about that. Good use of technology is when technology 23, and we're going to multiply that by 11. Whenever we multiply by 11, okay. Good use of technology is when it allows us to do something that we couldn't do before. So, normally, if I'm teaching this, or anything else, this was just a maths example, the students would have to be in the class with me at that time, and I'm explaining it. How many students will actually understand everything that I've explained at that moment in time? Probably not that many. But if I can capture that explanation and I can send that to, I can explain in class, but I can also capture that and send it to my students. The reality is students can watch that as many times as they want. They can pause, they can go back, they can go forward. In 6 months' time, they can go and watch that again. And also what's powerful is when this is enabled across the whole school, and parents can access it as well. Then when children go home, parents are able to support their children with that learning as well. So it's not about having something really complicated. It's not about a million acts. It's about doing something that's consistent across the organization. So it doesn't matter if you are in a maths class or a science class or anywhere else. When I'm learning something new, my teacher does this kind of video tutorial type thing and explains it, and they just send it to us and we've got it. It's different from sometimes the death by PowerPoint experience. Because that's just slide after slide of information. And actually, the way humans learn, this ability to kind of have a blank screen and just to explain something with my voice, our mind and our ears can follow that quite easily. When you see a slide and suddenly you've got really nice photos and animations and text and this and that, and the teacher speaking at the same time, that's a lot of information going to the brain at the same time. And actually, there's things that can get missed out. In 1971, there was some research done by a guy called Alan Pavio, and he talked about something called dual coding. Nothing to do with technology and apps, but actually what he was talking about is the way in which humans learn is that they have the visual and they have the audio, and the both things connected together. So when you see the visual and the explanation, the visual is helping the audio and the audio is helping the visual. And it's these two dual-coded channels that are interconnected. And I think, really, for me, as educators, the way in which we present learning in this way is actually quite powerful. I don't think that we have to do millions of new things, but actually, you know, if in a school this is done in a consistent manner, whenever new learning is being taught, I think that there's the power to improve learning, there's a power to improve education. Students who don't speak Swedish as their first language, they can stop, pause, go back, rewind, you know, they can go back to it again. Some will watch it twice, some will watch it 5 times, some will watch it many times. And each time you watch it, you pick up something new. I've got something to show you, okay? If I just come out of this and I just go back to the presentation, I'm going to show you something on screen. Some of you might have seen this already, right? Which doesn't matter, but will be interesting to kind of see what results we get with this, right? So I want you to really focus on the screen. I'm going to show you a little video. And on the video, there are 6 people. 3 of them are dressed in black, 3 of them are dressed in white, and they are passing a football or a ball to one another. What I want you to do is to count how many times those people that are dressed in white pass the ball. You got that? Yeah? Okay. How many times those people that are dressed in white are passing the ball? Okay. Ready?
Count how many times the players wearing white pass the ball.
Okay, what was the answer? 16. Oh, okay, let's have a look. Well done. Okay, now I've got 3 questions for you. Number 1, how many people saw the gorilla? Hands down. How many people did not see the gorilla and thinking, what the heck is this guy talking about? Okay. You guys are gonna die of embarrassment in a few minutes, yeah? Okay. Number 2, how many people saw the curtains change in color? Ooh, just a few people. How many people saw one of the players just walked off the stage? Oh, okay, not bad, not bad. That's usually gets a few. I'm going to play the same video again. When I did this once, somebody in the audience said, no, you definitely played a different video the second time round. I promise you it's not a different video, it's the same one. So watch this now.
Count how many times the players wearing white pass the ball.
Okay. So, red curtains, 6 players. And here he comes. And the curtains change colour from red, and actually one of the players walked off as well. My point with this is that actually, the way our brains work, if you fire too much information, you sometimes even miss the obvious. So now actually in the way in which we present learning needs to change. Having a PowerPoint slide or a keynote slide with lots of graphics and all that color and all of that, your mind is actually spending time processing that. Keeping it as simple as possible means your mind is not focusing on anything else. When I did that 11 times application, you were looking at the screen, there was nothing on the screen except what I was revealing and speaking and talking to you at that moment in time. And you could probably recall exactly what I did. So how we present learning is actually really important, and what I believe is we now have technology that's simple, that's reliable, that allows us to kind of capture our explanations as teachers and be able to share that across the school. And I think that can happen now. We are equipped and we have technology that actually allows that to happen. What I'm saying to schools is that if you can do that as a consistent approach across your organization, it actually has huge impact. Because good schools are consistent. Outstanding schools are consistently good. So it's not about being amazing and wow, but actually, if you can do something consistently good, so it doesn't matter which class you go to, you're going to get a good learning experience, you get your explanation, you can actually walk out with it and watch it and listen to it as many times as I want, but I've actually seen my teacher do this in class as well, then that actually provides great opportunity to kind of do things. The other thing that's kind of quite key, and this is important to understand, is part of the power of this is voice. As a teacher, I can explain something to my students. I know my students, I know the background, I know the context, they know me. How I explain something is something that they've got used to. It's different from watching it on YouTube. It's local. If they get stuck, they can come and see me again. So in another school, we kind of did this project and we started to look at verbal feedback. So one of the things that we did was, as a study, we stopped teachers in those classes giving any written marking feedback. And the only thing the teachers were using was verbal feedback. And what we did was we kind of used some really simple tools that allowed us to do this. Now I'm going to show you a tool, but actually you can use OneNote, or I think that's what a lot of people are using. You can use it for that. But I'm just going to give you an example what this particular school did. Okay, so this is a class. This is the kind of, the things that the students, you can see the students are submitting work in this way. And if I just pull up this student's book, right? So it's written work. The student did writing in a book, and then the student took a photo of it, and then they posted it here for the teacher to see. Now what the teacher does is really simple. Where you can see the green heart, if I just press the play button.
Ahmed, can you tell me what cohesion means? Explain and give me examples of cohesive devices.
I can annotate with voice. And actually, really simple and reliable, I can just zoom in. I want to give feedback on this paragraph. I tap on this button, it's lit up in blue at the top. I just tap here. This happens, I hit record, I just speak and I give verbal feedback. 7 seconds, 6 seconds of verbal feedback is like half a page of writing. And some of the results that the teachers saw was actually 100% of students are actually responding back, because it's the teacher's voice, they're seeing it as a command. I want you to do this, so they're doing it. Whereas before, the teacher was saying, when I used to write the comment, sometimes they did it and sometimes they didn't, and sometimes they just saw it as a comment. So that voice element and the way you communicate and the things that you can say becomes actually quite a powerful tool and approach in the way in which learning can happen. So one is the whole video feedback thing. The other thing is the voice feedback and the way in which you can do that. Actually, that becomes quite a powerful tool and a powerful way in which we can look at things. I'm going to show you a couple of other things. Just kind of conscious of time. Here we are. This isn't about lots of tools, but as time is going on and technology is developing, there are more and more tools coming that allow teachers to take something complicated and simplify it. So I'm going to show you a few things now, which is kind of, I think it's worthwhile. It'll be interesting to see where it goes in education as time goes on. I'm going to need this cable to be quite long, so let me just move everything out of the way so I don't trip and fall and all that kind of stuff. So, have a look at this, right? So this also, we're kind of using voice explanations for this as well. I'm just going to show you a couple of things. If I open this up, okay, and I'm going to open up this tool called Hologo, right? Now, I tap on this. It's kind of an interesting library of content, okay? And you've got different subjects that you can kind of look at and so on. I'll just go to animals. I'm going to tap on elephant. And it's a library of content that keeps going. And what I can do, he says, okay, depending on light, here we are. Okay, we can put the elephant in the room, right? Okay? Now, this is kind of fascinating in some ways, because for a long time this kind of stuff was like, wow, this looks amazing. But how can I actually use this in the classroom? The answer is really simple. You couldn't do this before, but you can do this now. Top right hand side, swipe down, hit the record button, and suddenly I can start talking. What is this animal? What does it look like? Explain it to me, tell me about certain features. What do you think it uses its nose for? Blah, 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 and so on. I record that video, I send it to my students. It's an activity that they will be able to watch, listen, explain, and they have to respond back as well. I could actually say to my students, go to that Hologo tool, download the elephant, and I want you to answer these questions. How is it adapted for survival? Talk to me and walk up to it and explain and point to me the different aspects about this thing. Tell me about its ear, why is it so big? What does it do? Tell me about adaptation and so on. They're having to speak and explain, not just write. You can't cut and paste this stuff. It's authentic learning. You can't take it from somewhere else. You've got to develop language. And it does other things, right? So you can hit attack and make him go angry and all that kind of stuff and so on. You could get with the younger teachers, younger children, I've seen teachers kind of get their students to stand next to him and see how big can he actually get. Is he that big? Or is he actually just that small? you know, and you can kind of look at all sorts of different things around this, which is kind of powerful and interesting. But there are libraries of this kind of content that's coming out now.
What was it called?
This one is called Hologo. Hologo. Okay?
Thank you.
I love it. I got a question halfway through. That's amazing. Thank you. Right? But it doesn't stop there. There's some other things that happen as well, right? So they've done some other things that actually I think are quite powerful. So look at this here. If I go to Journeys, I can tap on the Great Wall of China and watch this happens. Tap on here, and I'm just going to kind of do this. What it does is it puts a doorway in the room, but then what I can do is, if I can, my cable's not long enough, is it? Maybe okay. I can actually go through the doorway, and I'm actually in China now, on the Great Wall. I can begin to have a look. I can go for a walk. I can see different things. I can kind of do all this kind of stuff. And again, I can record this and explain and talk and share a journey. And I could send this to my students. I can capture it now. It's not just something that I'm playing with. Or I could ask the students to do this and share their journey. I think what's important about this is that they've left the door open so we can go back to our classroom. Okay? So we don't get kind of trapped in China. Not at the moment anyway. Okay? And there we are. Right? And that's now. So we can kind of imagine where this might end up in years to come. Or even in the next year or so. You know, what if I can dial in, or I can actually end up somewhere where I can kind of work with and so on. So there's some really great tools here that you can kind of use. JitSpace is another one. This is absolutely free. You can download, you can use as part of your learning experience. You can record your voice and again explain things here. If I tap on the planet Earth, you know, it will literally just download that and I can just kind of put that, you know, wherever I need to put it. I'm going to put it here. Okay, here I am. And I can kind of again begin to look at that. Again, I can go over, record voice, explain things. I can interact with it as well. It does open up and kind of show me things that typically might have been difficult to look at in the past. And I can share this out to students. This video clip, I can send it, put it on OneNote. I can attach additional voice to it and so on. The type of activities that we can create with this are very different compared to what we've been able to do in the past. And that's something that we really kind of have to understand, you know, in terms of possibilities, yeah? So I think that when it comes to this kind of approach, there are things that are now beginning to change pretty significantly. And I think it's becoming more and more difficult to kind of ignore the possibilities with this. It's not about doing a million things. It's about doing a few things consistently. If from today you can go away and say, okay, I'm teaching this tomorrow, if I just switch my screen record and I just doodle and scribble and explain something, you don't have to be an artist. It doesn't have to look amazing. If the explanation is there, and I can send that to students, let's see what the students come back with. Let's get the feedback from students. Let's see if this is the new way in which I can share information, you know, and I can kind of explain things in this way. So I think that there's huge opportunities to make that happen. There are things in education that can be pretty expensive. And for me, this is probably the most expensive thing in education. Sometimes I say these are the 6 most expensive words in education. Just keep doing the same thing all the time. Change is like a natural part of the world that we live in at the moment. We just look at the technology in our pockets, and what we find is actually that it's changed, and we've changed with it, and we've continued to grow, and we've continued to learn new things. I think what's fascinating is when you look at other industries. So look at this, right? This was surgery about 100 years ago. It looks really painful. It looks like it's in somebody's kitchen. You can probably guess everybody's roles and what they're doing, except for the guy at the door. I think he's the local butcher. Yeah? But, you know, this was surgery and this is probably what we would expect. Now, you fast forward 100 years or so, and what you end up with is something totally different. Technology is allowing the surgeons to do things that they simply could not do before. In fact, you can see three things that I mentioned earlier. Number one, you can see that this is going to be time efficient. The speed at which they could do this surgery is going to be pretty quick compared to what they used to do before. You can see that the speed at which this patient will recover will be much faster compared to what they were able to do before. You can see that if they're going to recover faster, the cost is going to be less. If they can do more of these surgeries in a day, that brings the cost down. So initially, yes, the tools are expensive. But the surgeons have had to spend time learning how to use those tools effectively. They are now able to do things that they could not do in the past. And what we say is surgery has transformed. It's not the same as before. If you took that surgeon from 100 years ago and put him in this room, you'd be thinking, this is what's going on, this looks like some kind of magic. Yeah? And actually, when you then begin to look at this in education, it's a different story. 100 years ago, classroom looked like this, and if you want to see modern classrooms, it's just this photo in color. Actually, for a lot of schools, things haven't really changed. And what we've done in education is we've translated. We haven't transformed, we've translated. So what I mean by translation is this. So the teacher has to be in this photo. If the children want to learn whatever they're learning, the teacher has to be there in that room, standing at the front, in front of a chalkboard, giving an explanation. Then as time went on, the chalkboard changed, and we ended up with these whiteboards, yeah, with color markers and all that, looked very nice. But the teacher still has to be there at that time, and the students have to be there at that time, and it's just the teacher doing that same explanation. Then what we did was we said, these whiteboards are nice, but let's spend more money and buy interactive whiteboards. So what we did was we spent so much money on interactive whiteboards, actually the teacher's just doing exactly the same thing. Standing at the front, the students have to be there, and hey, I'm kind of just doing my kind of explanation around the learning and so on. And then as time went on, actually those interactive whiteboards were not that simple. They weren't always reliable, so we just relied on the projector. So what's happened in education, historically, is that we've become really good at doing the wrong things really well. We haven't kind of changed and transformed. We haven't understood that actually this piece of glass that I have in my hand and this technology that I have in my hand actually can transform. It doesn't have to be complicated. Yes, I'm explaining my thing and I'm recording my voice, but now it's captured. By the way, it's being captured in a simple and reliable way. The thing that I forgot to mention earlier was when I made that in multiply by 11 video, at the end of the video, it didn't ask me, what file name do you want to call it? Where do you want to save it? What frame rate do you want? It didn't ask me any of that stuff. It just saved it, stuck it in my photos. That's what I mean by simplicity. You know? And reliability is make 20 of those videos or use it for the next week and see, does it work each time? Or does it fail? And if it works and it's reliable, then you begin to change and you begin to say, actually, I could just do this really easily. So the ability to kind of transform is really important. It can't be translation anymore. It has to be transformation. And, you know, yesterday I was in Visby, at an education center over there, and it was fascinating, yeah? In terms of the learning environment, and it was an adult education center for people that were kind of still in education and training, that were older. Many of them had come from different countries, and it was kind of like difficult to kind of get them settled in. So they wanted to educate them, and they can't educate them always on site. So part of their kind of learning experience or their learning spaces was digital. There's a physical space, come and sit in my classroom and I'll explain this to you. But there was also this digital space. Hey, I've made this video, I've put it here, it's an explanation and you can have a look at this. Or, and obviously we probably wouldn't do this in a school environment, but for them to be able to say, okay, let's have a conference at this time and I can explain this to you, that's happening. In fact, more and more we're seeing opportunities for learning to happen in digital spaces, not just in physical spaces as well. And it's an interesting picture as time goes on, right? Because where we are and the way in which the speed at which technology is moving is pretty significant. There was a school that I was working with in the Middle East, and it was a British international school in Dubai, actually it was. When I got there, I met the principal, and the principal was showing me around. And she said to me that Abdul, she goes, the children, the 5-year-olds that are coming in now into school, their expectations are different. Like they already have watched things and listened to things even before they've come to us. And she says, I do this activity with them when they come in. And she said this year it was kind of a bit strange. So we had a whole bunch of children, and I picked like 6 or 7 of them, 5-year-olds that have just come in, and I put them on a table, and then I got some objects, and I put them on the table. I put the objects in the middle of the table, and then I told the children, you have to figure out what these objects are. And she goes, what I put on the table, in terms of the objects, was this. So these 5-year-olds are looking at this and getting really excited. One of the girls pointed to those cassettes, you know those cassettes, audio cassette? She pointed to that and she said, I know what that is. She said, it's got music on it. My granddad's got lots of them. So her friend that was sat next to her said that your granddad is really weird. Because why does he want to listen to 2 songs at the same time? One of the boys in the group said, actually I think it's really cool because, you know, if her granddad's friends come, some can sit on this side and listen to this song, some can sit on the other side and listen to that song. And I can't do that with my iPod. So he thought it was really cool. They were asked to turn it on and they were tapping the glass screen. And then someone had a really good idea because it wasn't working, tapping. Somebody said, you have to press and hold. So they did the press and hold thing, and the principal said to me, this was the first year this happened. She goes, because this happens all the time. But she goes, this was the first time someone put their hand up and said, Miss, we think you forgot to charge this last time. It's not working. Yeah. And then the conversations continued, and then right at the end, one of the boys came over. He thought these things were really cool. Okay, and he asked if he could take one home. The teacher said, yes, you can. She asked him, do you know what it is? And he said, yeah, I know what it is. And she said, it's a 3D printed version of the save icon. You know the save icon? Yeah? It's that, it's been like 3D printed. And he thought that hole was the keyring for it. The holes on the side, and so on. So, I mean, I kind of find these sorts of things quite fascinating, yeah, and quite funny in some ways, but it's not just the fact that technology is changing, it's the speed at which it is changing. It's exponential. That's why we hear statements like when the anniversary of the moon landing, there were statements and memes that were being put out that said, that the amount of technology that was used to land the rocket on the moon is actually less than the amount of technology we have in our mobile phones. It's not an incremental increase in technology anymore, it's exponential. So what we will be able to do in 2 years and 3 years, it's not just a step up. Actually, things will begin to change. And we see it. We hear it on the media. Whole thing about 5G and who has control of data and the speed at which information goes actually is going to affect countries and their ability to do business and the kind of services that they will be able to hold and so on. It's changed. The way we watch television 10 years ago and now is totally different. Okay? The industry's changed completely. And maybe it will change again. Change is almost the new constant. And that's the thing. We've really got to understand that, when it comes to education, how is this going to affect us? The thing is that this isn't new. People sometimes think this is new. Hey, iPad in education, technology in education, is this new? What's happening? What's going to happen to the children and their learning and so on? It's not new. It's actually, that change has happened before. So, if you go back quite a long time, there was this gentleman. Yeah? You heard about him? Gutenberg? He invented the printing press. Okay? And actually, when he invented the printing press, most people thought, wow, this is amazing. This is like the equivalent of the internet at that time. Because before the printing press, what you had was scrolls. People used to use scrolls. And if I wanted you to kind of have the same information, I would give you all a scroll, you'd open it up, and somebody would have had to have written that many scrolls out and all that kind of stuff. But what we find is actually, when the printing press was invented, there were some people that raised objections at that time, and it's kind of recorded. And I find it fascinating, the objections that were recorded, because you would think that, suddenly with books, wow, this is amazing. I can give the same book to everyone in the room, 10 to page 35, everybody's on the same page. You could print 1,000 books and send them everywhere, and people could learn and read and find information. But even then, there were some people that raised objections. Now, what were those objections? This is quite fascinating. Maybe you've heard these objections. One of them was, if you print books, people will forget how to write. That logic makes sense, right? Print books. Why do you need to write? Machines are printing 1,000 books, no problem. And there was a big movement. People are going to not write anymore. There was another concern as well. Maybe you've heard this one as well. The other concern was, what if you print the wrong information? You can have fake news everywhere. Because suddenly you could print 1 million books and it's got the wrong information in there. Okay? So there was all these concerns. Anyway, what we found out was really, and what we know, is that books continued. Yeah? Scrolls disappeared. In fact, we built big buildings and put lots of books in them. We call them libraries. And until very recently, if you wanted to know about a particular topic or subject, you would go to the library. And you would do this thing where you kind of stand in front of this thing and pull out a little drawer with cards in it. The card tells you which shelf, which row, and you go and look for the book and so on. Okay? And that's how we kind of got information. What's happened is that the reason why many historians say books overtook scrolls is because the speed at which you could access information in books was much faster than the speed at which you could access information in scrolls. Simple as that. It's how quickly you could access information. Scrolls was very difficult. You couldn't index them. Somebody in their mind would just think, oh, we'll put all these scrolls here, they would just be in like a box. With books, you could index and you could do things, you could find things, you could reference, and so on. What's happened over the last 10, 15 years is we've seen this age of change happen again. Because the world that we live in now, if you want to find something out quickly, or you just generally want to find something out, most people don't make a trip to the library for that. You put your hands in your pocket and you Google. Okay? And even that, people have become a bit more mature. You know, you don't just, when you Google something, you don't just take the first thing anymore. You kind of look at all these 2 or 3 things and the list and where's the source from and who's put this on. In fact, access to information is no longer a problem. The problem is, how do I know that this is the right information? And it's kind of strange to say this, but we now live in an age where when you go to see the doctor, you already know what's wrong with you. And you're not just looked in one place, you'll have looked in 2 or 3 places. You'll know what you should be prescribed. And if you go to the doctor says something different, oh, that's a really bad doctor. Okay? But actually, access to information has changed. There was an article in a newspaper just a few weeks ago, actually last week I think it was, and it was about, you know, young people and, you know, the way in which that they are interacting with phones and mobile phones, and how many of them sleep with their phones next to them. Okay? And actually, one of the issues being that, and the article kind of went on around that, and screen time and all that kind of stuff. But one of the things that he actually said was that students and young people are actually the most accessed kind of app or tool is YouTube. And then within YouTube, you know, it's music videos, and the other thing was how-to videos. How do I do this? How do I do that? Yeah? And people will know that. Some of you might have already used the how-to videos. Your vacuum cleaner is not working and you've done a how-to video. Yeah? Your sink was leaking in the middle of the night, and for some reason someone thought it was a good idea to put that video on there. Okay? Because that's the world that we're living in. And it's kind of crazy because you don't just get one video, you'll get about 500 videos. Yeah? I mean, you're very thankful at the time, but you're thinking, how the heck, why would somebody do this? When we talked about those videos and screen recordings and tutorials, those are how-to videos. For your children, for learning, for your students, directly with you. It has big impact. It's the way in which students are expecting to learn. They might not be able to articulate it, but actually it is. And it's kind of interesting, right? Because this new approach and this new thinking, the World Economic Forum put out some information a while back, I can find it. They called it DQ, they call it digital intelligence. Okay, and you can Google this and you can find all this stuff out from there. You'll get the images and everything from there. But digital intelligence is really interesting. It's actually about humans that are living in the society today, people that live in society today, understanding various aspects of digitization. This isn't just for education or for schools or teachers, although it bears importance to it. But actually there's lots of things here that a lot of people are illiterate about. They just don't know. And they haven't bothered to find out. But, you know, there's things like digital security. We think we know password protection and so on. Most kids know their parents' password. And if you've got young kids, you'll know that. And you can change your password and they find out. Okay? So thumbprints and face prints and stuff like that is good. And I'm sure if you've got kids like I've got, I'm sure they will have held their phone up to your phone up to your face a few times, tried it out when you were sleeping, see if it works, you know, and so on. But it's kind of important to be able to understand what is password protection and what does that look like. And you know, I find this sort of thing really interesting. Even password protection, even password has become it's kind of going out, right? It's becoming more like face prints and digital prints and all that kind of stuff. So potentially this is